Yeah. So conspiracy theories, Donald Trump is threatening to ask very politely to the CIA to release the information on JFK.
Well, I think he signed an executive order, which means he's not asking politely on this occasion. He is insisting on it, and all of the documents will actually finally come out, which didn't
I think
happen
that's a
during his
naive way of looking at the way that American politics
all of the
works.
documents in that particular whatever it is collection of
Yeah.
stuff that they collected due, I think, as a result of what was called the Oliver Stone Act from the mid 90s, was it? Where Oliver Stone's film JFK
Yeah.
led to a massive release of files, but then there was still about 3,000 of them that even under Trump's first administration were not released because he thought that there was something, he thought that it would be bad for the country to do so. We don't really know the reason. I should clarify as well, Oliver Stone's pressure to release those files was absolutely fantastic because it didn't just lead to, I should point out, I don't particularly believe in the Kennedy conspiracy, as we may discuss in a minute. But regardless of that, not only was the film itself an absolute must-watch, brilliant piece of work, a classic piece of cinema, but actually the Oliver Stone Act, which led to the release of all these documents, was an incredibly important thing to do because it led to the release of information not just about Kennedy's assassination, but about a whole range of other secret programs. So, for example, we would never know about Operation Northwoods from the 1960s, which was a CIA program to blame Cuba for a series of domestic, deliberately targeted CIA bombings that they planned to do, so that the United States had the excuse to invade Cuba and kill Castro. Now, Operation Northwoods is a huge, sprawling plot, and that would never have been released were it not for what Oliver Stone did. But nonetheless, I still don't think that Kennedy was actually murdered in a conspiracy. I just think that a lot of good things have come out of that investigation. And in that sense, I sort of straddle two camps because I do like conspiracy theories, and I do like what Oliver Stone did there, and I do like and I do think that there's value in all of that work by people like Anthony Summers, the historian who did great stuff on Nixon and on Kennedy, and a load of the JFK researchers. I just don't believe that ultimately there was a shooter from the grassy knoll.
But
And
that's not the same
I
as
also believe that I've got an electrician coming in here. Yes, please feel free to come through. Someone's just fixing my lights.
that's not the same as saying
See,
there's no
sometimes things just happen as an accident.
That's being cut, all right?
Oh no, we've got it. We've got it. Good. Yeah. Just awkward chop. Awkward chop. That's perfect.
But it's quite good that
I think
he's
this podcast should be a series of awkward chops.
yeah, half sentences. It's quite good that he'll be in the background with his ladder, and then a split second later he won't be there, and then he'll be back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the kind of the aesthetic beauty of this podcast is not its big draw, I wouldn't say, Daniel.
Right, fair enough.
Sorry, what was your point? Sorry, I
So what are you saying now? That
didn't
I've
mean
got to
to
start going?
offend
Are
you.
you saying I've got to start going to the gym? This podcast is really going to change my life.
Not talking about your own beauty or otherwise.
Yeah, well, that whatever you said about 20 minutes ago
Yeah,
about the second shooter,
yeah,
that's not that doesn't mean that it wasn't a conspiracy.
that's true. It is possible. Even the arch kind of nemesis of the conspiracy theorist, Gerald Posner, who wrote a book in 1993 called Case Closed, and he's been sort of the bête noire of the conspiracy community. Even he says words to the effect of, well, we don't really quite know what Lee Harvey Oswald's motives were. Maybe he was affected by, maybe someone told him to do it. We don't really know, but we do know that there weren't a series of fatal shots from different directions.
Well, you claim to not know that.
Yeah, to
The
be
way you phrase it, we don't know. That's all agreed.
we all right, fine, all right. Okay, I know, and everyone else doesn't know because they're too thick to see that there's no hole in the back of the guy's head. Too
Yeah.
ideologically blind
You
and
tell them.
incapable of analyzing basic evidence to see that there's no
But yeah,
hole
I
in the
don't think that
back
that is that
of someone's
really
head on live recorded footage from the time.
is that really the most interesting thing about it, the magic bullet and all of that. I mean, it is surely is more about Oswald and his links to the CIA and Russia and Cuba and what would be gained from Kennedy's death. Why would why would parts of the government want to kill Kennedy? Because I mean, I don't think the thing is once you start to look into sort of American history and particularly the deep state, it's something that's I just wouldn't put it past them at all. You wouldn't put certain elements of it.
Completely agree, and they're actually also releasing the files on Martin Luther King and RFK as well, Kennedy's
Yeah.
brother, who was presidential candidate in 1968. And from what I can see of those, quite likely that there were that there was a conspiracy to kill them. It's just that what you're saying is, isn't it more interesting to think about the deep state's motives and all that context? Completely, absolutely, it's way more interesting to think
No,
about
no, no. I'm not saying
that.
it's
And there are all sorts of people who would have wanted Kennedy dead. I'm just saying. I ask you the question: why isn't there if a bullet's gone through the front of his head?
I'm not
Why isn't
talking
there
about the
on
bullets.
the film? Why isn't there a hole in the back of his head? Or did the bullet just stay in his head?
Look, I've never really even looked at that too much.
No,
Maybe,
exactly. So that's
maybe,
not the question I'm asking.
no, because no one cares
No one
about
can
that.
answer
You're
it. Yeah, but
distracting with,
no one cares
this is
about it
not the
because
issue.
people prefer thinking about
No,
the
no,
contracts,
people prefer
Castro,
thinking about what, like, even if it was just one shooter, why maybe the car slowed down? Why was it allowed to happen? Why was the building not searched? Why was Oswald up there? There's lots of things that could have happened to allow Oswald into it. Why was Oswald
Yeah,
shot
that's true.
immediately after being arrested? And
Yeah.
then why was all the information about around the case buried and possibly going to be released now?
Absolutely. And if it does come out that someone did prompt Oswald,
Now, I really hope it comes
that
out
would be
that there
really
was a
interesting.
shooter. There was 20 shooters. There's
Yeah,
thousands of grassy knolls,
I'm saying
and
that's
and then I can
far
laugh in
away.
your face. And
I'm
it's
very happy. I'm very happy to be wrong. I'm just saying there couldn't have been a shot from the front, which is the grassy knoll just over there. It couldn't have been there because on the film footage there is no bullet coming out the back of the head, so it couldn't have been the grassy knoll. There's the possibility of some other kind of conspiracy, and there is the possibility of Oswald being told to do it by someone somewhere. Not going to rule that out,
all being
and
allowed to do it.
that kind of thing could definitely have happened in the case of Martin Luther King. But the problem is what you've done there is completely normal. But I've asked the question, why is there no hole in the back of the head? And you've gone, isn't it more interesting though to think about? And that's what everyone does, and that's the problem with the conspiracy.
No, because
No one's looking at the
no,
key most falsifiable piece of evidence, and
because
that's what
that's
that is.
irrelevant.
And that's what I'm doing on a
No, but
new
that's
series.
irrelevant. No, stop being
Why
so
is it
smug.
irrelevant?
Because it's not to do with whether there's a conspiracy, whether there's two shooters. That doesn't matter.
Oh, you're saying that it could be one shooter, but there's still a
Yes,
conspiracy.
it could
Okay,
just be Oswald.
that's fine, but
That's fine.
that's not a very I completely agree with you, but that's not a very popular conspiracy. The most people say that there are more than one. Most conspiracy theorists say that there's more than one shooter.
Yeah, because
I don't know what the percentage of that is, but I'd say it must be at least 80% of
that's the
people
deep
think that
state
it's
muddying the waters with their fake
ah
propagandists.
oh
They're
well
fake conspiracy theorists, people. I'm the only one out there looking for the truth.
I'm glad that you finally got to the bottom of
On
the Kennedy
on
assassination
this
on
podcast,
this
the greatest
podcast
podcast
without looking
ever.
at any of the evidence. You finally nailed it.
Well,
It
all of
was
the
Lee Harvey
evidence that
Oswald.
goes against me is fake news that's
Yes,
being
exactly.
brought in by Russian agents. And everything
Yeah.
that I say is absolutely true and trust the science.
Yes. Anyway, that's
No, I just
yeah.
think that um, it was very convenient for Kennedy to be killed that time. I suppose it would, for a lot of forces in the world, it's always convenient for a president to die at
For a
any
president to
particular
die,
given
yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
mean, I do accept that. But I think Kennedy was it was a particularly dramatic moment in US history, and Kennedy was challenging some pretty powerful
Mm.
forces within the not only his own administration but the wider government. And as a result of his death, things went a particular way that they probably wouldn't have gone had it been had he stayed alive. And that's
I completely
unusual.
agree. I completely agree, and I think that's why I've never. I did actually just say people are too stupid to see the whole no hole in the back of there. But as a rule, I don't ever ridicule anyone for believing in the Kennedy conspiracy and various other conspiracies because it makes a heck of a lot of common sense interpretation of what happened. And that's what I believed until I just looked a little bit more closely at the what I consider to be the best evidence,
Do you think that
or the most falsifiable evidence, I should say.
because it's such a obviously such a big moment in US history, such a high profile assassination, and there's just so much interest in that, it takes away from other much more likely conspiracy theories, which are also very, very damning for certain parts of the US government and the deep state, because people are so focused on this particular issue, I suppose. And this is
Yeah.
me I'm trying to do a link again. Just no,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Yeah, I can see the cogs are turning on this media industrial machine. Yeah, I mean, the argument goes, in case anyone's unaware, is that Kennedy was going to end the war in Vietnam and potentially even end the Cold War in his second administration, and that's why the CIA etc. had to take him out, uh, and that regardless, was it did it create a huge historical difference in terms of the Cold War and so on to have Johnson come in? That's debated, but I think definitely had some kind of impact. I don't know the extent. And does the focus on that conspiracy affect, mean that people aren't more focused on other things? I guess so. Although there is plenty of, I think all these things are stories, aren't they? So you can I don't know. Can you really sort of say, oh, you should be focusing more on this story? I don't know. I've sort of lost my point there a little bit. Don't worry,
Do you know
we're chopping out
Carl?
the first 45 minutes.
Do you know Carl Oglesby? I think that's how you say his name.
No, I don't
He
know
wrote a
who
book,
Carl.
Yankees versus Cowboys.
Oh, that sounds good. What's that?
It's uh it's sort of about this Kennedy assassination. It's more about Nixon and Watergate, but
Yeah.
going to the beginning of Nixon's career, and sort of tracking that through. And he makes a link between he absolutely believes that Kennedy was assassinated, and he sees it was
He was. I mean, I wholly agree with him. Kennedy was definitely assassinated.
yeah. So we can agree on something. He
Yeah,
didn't. He
we're
didn't.
we're breaking new ground
He's
here.
not in like some Radio Shack with Elvis somewhere.
Mm,
But yeah, he saw it was something to do with Nixon's clique in government.
mm,
Obviously, he was in the Eisenhower administration, and they were kicked out by Kennedy. And they had all sorts of plans, including the Bay of Pigs and
mm,
Vietnam. And Kennedy was sort of scuppering those. And
mm,
then many years later, during the Watergate scandal, on the recordings, um, Carl Oglesby, I don't know how you say his name.
mm,
He brought up some of the stuff that was said on those recordings about, and like it's very vague references, but Nixon was saying we don't want to bring up the whole Bay of Pigs thing.
mm,
It would be a
mm,
disaster to look into that, that kind of
mm,
stuff.
mm.
So yeah, he's it's an interesting book. It's definitely, and there's a
Yeah,
good recording of him discussing it on YouTube. There's very little about it actually, but the whole Yankees versus Cowboys, it's like one particular aspect of how the US government is in a sort of civil war with itself. In fact, it comes out of the Civil War idea of the Yankees are the Northeast, mainly industrial
mm-hmm,
elites, or they come out of that,
mm-hmm,
and the cowboys are the southern, are all the people that made their money through slavery and then were sort of dispossessed, but they kept all of their money and they kept all of their military power and links within the military. And so the idea is that the US, the whole state, including the military and the deep state, are divided by people that are loyal to various factions, various understandings of what the US is and what they're actually fighting for. And these are
yeah.
constantly, at each other's
Along
throats.
Yeah, and along with JFK, the 1991 film by Oliver Stone, which was absolutely brilliant. A similarly brilliant follow-up in 1995 was called Nixon, and that was a biopic of Nixon by Oliver Stone. And that same dynamic is in there, where he is threatened by these Southern industrialists and oil tycoons. But Nixon himself is threatened by them, not JFK, but Nixon faces the deep state, and it's brilliantly done. And in fact, the sort of evil baddie who's in it for a very brief time is played by Larry Hagman, who played J.R. Ewing from Dallas, like the baddie oil tycoon.
He's typecast.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. So all of those, that story, that what Oliver Stone called a counter myth, is in two parts effectively, is brilliant and in many ways very, very accurate. And certainly I think a useful thing to have as part of history, and certainly makes history really attractive and interesting. So I don't think there's any harm, or there is, I guess, some harm in doing history like that, but I do think it's generally overall a very good thing. It's just that I think in that particular case, there's different forensic evidence that suggests otherwise.
You just love, but that's so weird. You just love to like say, "Oh no, I think it's really, really great." But this one, don't look into it. Don't look into it. I think it's great that you are, but don't.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that nobody should be looking into the Kennedy assassination. Stay away from that, kids.
Let's move on. Talk about staying away from things. You went to a reform meeting. Now that was a late
Oh
one. Come
yes,
on, that was a good
yeah.
one.
You did well there. Again,